Hi guys, welcome to the Lunge and Lift podcast. Today we're continuing our performance series and we're talking everything nutrition for performance with our good friend and past guest Liam Holmes from PH Nutrition. Welcome back, mate. Congratulations on recently becoming a father. Huge news. How you coping?
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. Yeah, it's been good. He's 5, 6 days old now, so it's been obviously. I'm sure everyone else that's had their first child can attest to. It's a bit of a blur, but it's been amazing. Like it's been fantastic, and obviously new challenges have been thrown at me. So it's good. It's good to see some other faces rather than looking at him and my missus, which is obviously a great thing. But
Yeah, obviously.
yeah, it's nice to kind of get through the first week and feel good. And he's strong, healthy, and happy days. Mrs. is doing well, so yeah, looking forward to for getting things in place with him and getting back to a little bit of normality with work and chatting about what we're talking about performance nutrition today.
The new normal.
Mm.
Right. Yeah, let's crack straight into it then. So for those of you who haven't listened to our previous podcasts with Liam, he has a lot of experience working in nutrition in elite sport at the highest level. Liam, would you mind reminding the listeners of your background in football and transition to CrossFit and the sorts of teams and people you've been working with?
Yeah, I'll keep this quick because we don't want to be banging on about this. But yeah, I worked for Fulham Football Club for 9 years. I started in the medical team, and then it was there I did my masters in exercise and nutrition science, and ran the nutrition program there for 3 and a bit years. I then went during that time I worked for Republic of Ireland national team as well for 3.5 years, and then I went to Tottenham Hotspur and was at Spurs for almost 4 years, I think. And then I worked so I came out of, it was then I started PH Nutrition, came out away from Spurs and set up PH, and now consultant for FC Copenhagen Football Club, as well as working with some elite CrossFit athletes, notably Elliot Simmons, Jamie Green, Andre Hudot, and a few others over the past couple of years. So yeah, it's good. Some really kind of varied experience, as well as kind of working with some triathlons and stuff. But it has mainly been football and now kind of the CrossFit side of things.
Great. I think one of the reasons we love chatting to Liam is that he's got that super high-end elite experience, but he's able to relate it to the everyday athlete as well and take the lessons learned from absolute pure performance training and make it a bit more relevant to most of us who aren't quite at that level. So I guess a great place to start would be if we talk about the common pitfalls when eating for performance that you see at the super elite level and also at the everyday athlete, somebody who cares about training for performance. What are the trends that you see in both tranches of athlete?
I think almost defining what performance nutrition is at the start.
Yeah.
I think performance nutrition, I think often people can just think of it as it's purely athletic performance, like exercise performance. So how you perform in that 1 hour in the gym, or how you perform on a Saturday at your rugby game, football game, or at the event. Whereas actually for us, performance can be like, how do you perform every day? How do you perform in the gym? How do you perform at work, in your social life? And then for the athlete, it's how do you perform in training through the week? How do you, like, it's not just, I think, about that one time, that game day. So performance nutrition is a whole thing. It's a whole big, kind of big weekly, monthly, yearly thing, rather than just like this one-off. So once you look at that, then the athlete's side of things, performance nutrition, the common pitfalls is, I think one of the things, especially with CrossFit, is that there's a tendency to potentially kind of undereat sometimes, because it's not so much undereat, but it's challenging to get the required amount of food and calories in on a consistent basis. And I think that's the key. Like, you can do it for like 1 or 2 days, maybe on a rest day or certain times, but to consistently hit the caloric requirements, is quite a challenging thing to do to handle the volume. So I think that's not so much it's a fault. It's just it's a challenge to do. So and then that comes down not so much with CrossFit as well, but also kind of higher endurance athletes, people that are doing maybe Ironman triathlons. I've got a couple of guys doing Ironmans on our books at the moment, or training for them, and it's very hard because they train for so long.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's only a limited amount of time in the day to eat. So, you know, then you have to be looking at, you know, ways and strategies. I think we spoke about this on the podcast about how to get more calories into food on the previous one. So if anyone is trying to hit higher caloric intake, check that one out. But that would be a common thing that we see that trickles down from the top end to everyday athlete. You know, you've got work, you've got social, then you're trying to train for a marathon or a CrossFit competition, and you're training maybe twice a day or for like 3 hours a day. You know, it becomes very, very hard. So that would be something that I think is a really challenging thing to do. And then the next thing is just that people, I think, when they go, right, performance-based nutrition, I've got to eat for performance, is that they kind of lose the fact that actually eating for performance means just eating whole foods on a consistent basis in the right amounts for what you're doing, rather than it's something in a shiny tub, or it's a bar, or it's like, right, I have to be taking supplements, shakes, this, that. And actually eating for performance is actually kind of has a big crossover for eating for health and well-being. And so I think people can kind of get a little bit you know, worried about, oh, eating performance means I have to start taking all of these types of performance foods, quote unquote. So you know, I just those are the two things that I think that are very, very common in terms of, you know, the misconceptions for both athletes and for the everyday athlete.
What are the performance foods that are in vogue at the moment? What do people think that is going to give them the edge? I heard, well, I'd like to get your take on it actually. Beetroot and cherry supplements.
Yeah.
How legit is that?
Yeah, they are legit. So beetroot, 100%. Like, it's, you know, it's been shown to, you know, it's basically works on increasing your body's levels of nitrates, nitric oxide, which increases vasodilation, which helps with blood flow. You know, so there's been, you know, real good evidence on that to help with reducing time to fatigue and improving your performance. So if you are kind of doing, you know, more aerobic work, it's been really kind of, you know, would be beneficial to add in. There is some research actually. I'm wanted to make a really good point about this. Like, the effect of it is actually been shown to be larger for people that don't consume a lot of nitrate rich vegetables. So if you don't eat spinach, carrots, beet, you know, stuff like this, and then you take the beetroot supplement, you're probably going to see a bigger effect. Whereas if your diet is quite colorful and loaded with these types of foods that have these compounds in, then you might not see an effect as large as someone that doesn't. So be sure that some people might kind of see a real kind of a change if they take it, and some might go, I don't really see anything. So again, like, your starting point can be a really kind of, you know, contributing factor to that. So, you know, that is something I could definitely say to people that you would be a performance addition would be would add in. And then cherry and, like, you know, like the kind of blueberry or high antioxidant extracts, pomegranate extract, etc. They have really good research behind them in terms of, like, helping with lowering inflammation, and you know, when we exercise, we build up reactive oxygen species and all of these kind of like free radicals, and they can help to kind of basically scavenge them and get rid of them. Now, you know, we don't want to dampen the inflammation response too much, so we need a little bit of inflammation, but it's kind of like Goldilocks porridge. Like, we need just the right amount, you know. So we can include these foods on a regular basis, but if we make the porridge too hot, then it's just gonna, it's not going to be the right thing for us. So there is, again, the evidence behind it is to be using it potentially away from the workout window. So don't be taking it post-workout. You shoveling in a load of cherry extract post workout. But maybe on your rest days, or maybe during a period of really intense training, might quite help with doing that. But you don't need to be consistently taking this every day. I think that's something to kind of use in certain situations. But
I guess we're just with those kind of like, say, supplements, or say increasing your intake of those type of foods. I reckon, I'd just like to get your point, but if you ate them consistently, you'd probably get that your body would take what it needs to kind of work out, or not to, unless you're going through, as you say, a peaking phase where, things are working beyond normal. But if you're day to day, you're just trying to improve day in, day out and so forth, eating a vast range of nutrients, your body's going to take what it needs. So getting the whole food, you're also going to get all the other, like the fiber and the other nutrients that are in there, rather than, say, taking the supplement version, which is great, but it's just taking a shot. It's like taking a shot of caffeine, compared to, say, as a powder thing, compared to, say, having it in a coffee. It's going to come through your system a lot slower and so forth, and your body's going to take it as it needs it. So
yeah, that's a really good point, mate. Like you say, it's a concentrated extract. So obviously we need it at certain times to get the level of that.
Yeah.
To get it from eating bowls of cherries is going to be challenging.
It's tasty and expensive, but it's great.
It's great. But it's you need it at certain situations. And it's probably a little bit out of scope of this going into that. But one of the things that you touched on there, like eating the whole fruit and the whole food and whatever, yes, you get all of these. We don't really know what else, all these phytochemicals and phytonutrients and antioxidants, polyphenols, whatever, are in these foods. We know most of them, but there's other things, like, say, the interactions of them. But when you take in, like, these foods, okay, that like these high antioxidant foods or vegetables and whatever, what you get is you actually get an upregulation of your own antioxidant system. Okay, I don't know, maybe I'll comment on this, but I can't remember what it is. I think it's the SIRT2 gene. Okay, so the SIRT2 gene gets upregulated, which is you're basically upregulating your body's own antioxidant system, right? And you get this from eating even small amounts of these, like, vegetables and fruits and high antioxidant foods. So a bit of a double whammy. You're getting the good stuff, and you're getting your body going, oh, well, I can upregulate my own stuff. So that's why eating whole foods on a regular basis is a really beneficial thing. Yes, you get the micros, maybe in less amounts than the concentrate, obviously, but you upregulate your body's own system as well. So yeah, definitely those two things, mate. And to loop back to your question, the other thing that kind of still keep popping up is ketones, exogenous ketones. I am not an expert in this by any stretch of the imagination. I just don't see that they work. So the more I read about it, I'm not quite sure about it. So I think for 99% of people, don't worry about it. Just try and get fitter rather than just trying to
put in the work rather than trying to find the shortcut.
And doing all of that. Like, even if Holland and Barrett have a raspberry ketone sale, bloody money. All right. Next thing may be like CBD oil. Is more
I was going to ask about that.
But maybe recovery. But like the research out there on that is just so sketchy and stuff like that. So I think if there's a placebo effect and you feel good, take it. Athletes out there, unless you're getting a load of dough from a sponsorship, then I'd probably steer clear, because it's not regulated by WADA or anyone. So
is it not?
There's no specific one on the Informed Sport registration. I think that are on, like, labs that say, like, it's completely safe, there's no THC, whatever. But I would be like, I don't recommend it to my guy.
I wouldn't. No, not at a high level.
No, I want to put my head on the chopping block there. So, but yeah, other than that, any kind of other new performance foods? I don't know. Maybe if anyone's listening and they want us to cover anyone, we can collate a list and we can kind of debunk them or say, yeah, these are wicked. So
sweet. One thing I wanted to loop back around to was on the quantity, like eating enough food for training. And it's something I wanted to ask you about anyway, was the quality versus quantity trade-off, because you see a lot of top athletes who have to eat loads and loads of food. Like, the one that sticks out in my memory is Michael Phelps from the Olympics years and years ago. and he's famously eating 12,000 calories a day, and they showed you what he would eat on a daily basis, and it was like bacon sandwiches covered in mayonnaise, like a couple of pizzas, just anything. And his argument was basically, I have to eat this much food to fuel my training, so I basically have to make it food that I like and I enjoy, and I can kind of scoff in. If it was all healthy, I would never get close to 12,000 calories. And yeah, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, and the sort of the actual consequences of that sort of diet. Would he be better off forcing himself to eat healthier food? Obviously, if he could eat 12,000 calories of healthier food, that presumably would be better. But in your experience, is he likely to be able, like 12,000 calories of food is such a big amount, to eat that from, your classic healthy foods, I think would be, hours of work. Yeah, hours of work.
I mean, Rob, you can eat, but I don't think you can eat 12,000 calories of.
Well, I not every day. I've done 10,000 calorie challenges and 15 and 20,000, and I've managed to do them. I've done 15. I got up to, I think, 17,000 calories on the 20,000 calorie challenge, and I fell asleep, and that was the worst bit. You can't fall asleep because then you're wasting hours of not eating. So yeah, I've done it. I've got it on YouTube as well. So I've done those days, and I have a very large appetite. So
wow.
I wouldn't recommend it.
No, mate, 100%.
No.
Yeah, if all things are equal, obviously eating, whatever amount of calories in a quote unquote what we're going to class as healthier foods would be better, of course. Like, these foods that are kind of what we maybe call more processed or less healthy or whatever are going to, have cause the body to be, either costing the body more energy to break down, or it's going to cost them increased inflammation because it's fried or processed or whatever, or from a poor quality source. Lots of different chemicals in these. Preservatives. We don't know how the body interacts with it. The liver will be under a lot of stress to try to detoxify this. When you have to upregulate these systems, like, you have to use nutrients like B vitamins and cofactors. So again, like, we don't know. Like, it's a very complex thing. So all in, like, everything being consistent, yeah, of course he's going to be beneficial, but it's the practicality of that. Like, it's possible. Like, chowing down on sweet potato and chicken, like, you ain't going to be able to do it. So he has to. It's a requirement, for him. So I think for me, I've never really had to work with someone at that level. The CrossFit side of things with the guys is probably where we go to, and it's, it is hard. Like, it's hard to get them to eat because, some of them are still working as well. So they're playing for 4 or 5 hours a day, and then they're working, and so there's minimal time. And that's where a lot of, like, when you're in football, that's all that, and professional athletes, that's all they do. They have time to eat. They have time to recover. They have time, often people to prep them food as well. So it becomes a bit easier to eat a higher amount. So I would say that, as much as he can, he should be trying to look at using some of the tips we spoke about before, maybe the rice pudding smoothies and slow cooking meat, so he can consume more food, of a healthier thing. And then you need to be topping up, and we do that with our athletes. When it's not to say that every 4,000 calories that we give them, or 4,500, is from really clean, no shit at all in their foods, but the higher the baseline of better foods is going to be helpful for them. And then what we spoke about there before, upregulating certain, helping their recovery as well as helping their energy, performance, energy output. And then we need to be making sure that there's something there that they actually like and enjoy and consume, and it gives them that little bit of a psychological break. They don't feel like they want to diet, so they can be like, okay, well, maybe it's a refeed once or twice a week. Maybe it's like something every day that they can consume. So it might be like, right, well, half a bar of dark chocolate for 60, 70 grams of it. Like, okay, that's 300 calories. Okay, well, 300 calories is quite a lot, to tack onto a meal in the evening. But that's a better quality source to get it from than, I don't know,
a litre of chocolate milk. That's the
Yeah,
go-to.
exactly. Or something that's, rubbish quality. So, yeah, I'm just using that as an example. So we will be putting these things in, for the athletes that maybe are listening, like, getting to a higher amount, try to build it as much as possible. And then, you need to be making sure that you're getting something in there that's, because you'll end up either falling off the wagon, or what might happen is not eating enough. Right? Because you're trying to build everything around just clean eating, and you're not actually eating enough, and then that's going to impact your performance and recovery. And there is something called a relative energy deficiency in sport, RED-S. If anyone wants to look into this, it was maybe the female listeners will know about female athlete triad, where you kind of get a low energy availability and it impacts the menstrual cycle. But it happens in men as well. Like the signs and symptoms are a little bit less, a little bit harder to spot, but it's common. And this basically means not eating enough for the amount of work that you're doing. And then you have decreased motivation, decreased mood, lack of training performance, lack of recovery, disrupted sleep, hormone issues such as low testosterone, thyroid function, or whatever. And but this can happen with people. This is something that's relative energy deficiency in sport. If anyone wants to Google it, just Google RED-S. So it's not necessarily in sport. It can also happen in, I've seen it in daily life. Like what happens is people might train and then they commute to work, and then they get into work and they go, right, Sarah, I need you to get into this meeting, and they go into a 3-hour meeting and she hasn't eaten, or the kids get in the way and then they don't eat. Like, I use my example. The last 3 days, I think I ate about 600 calories yesterday till in the day, because stuff was happening and I had chanced it, but I didn't stop. So if it can happen in everyday life. And then that impacts, if you're starting to feel grouchy, if you're starting to really struggle in sessions, we call it, are you thriving or surviving? So then you're looking at, are you just getting through sessions? Is it like lack of motivation? Is it taking you ages to warm up into sessions? Feel that you hit the wall earlier on? These types of things. So if you're looking at quality versus quantity, yes, you need to be focusing on quality all the time, but you also need to make sure that you're eating enough for performance. And remember, performance is not just in that 1 hour, it's in your day. So if
on that, because I think I just really want to hone in on that quality and quantity side, because so if using someone as an example, if they're training really hard and they're pretty much, they've got their training on point, the nutrition side of things is where they're slightly failing off. Now, if they're getting calories, say from like chocolate bars and so forth, to get calories in, because one, they just enjoy chocolate, do you think that then swapping to more nutrient dense foods, because if you say 1,000 calories are worth of chocolate bar, say as an example, right? So if you manage to get 1,000 calories worth of a lot more nutrient dense foods, do you think that will then unlock levels of performance that that they may not think they have, because now they're got better nutrients flowing through their body, they're able to recover faster? Do you think that is a valid statement? Or good, that's all I wanted you to say. That's good.
I mean, I have to say, I don't polarize myself. Like, I don't think things are good or bad. I don't really like if it fits your macros. Like, so with that's a real quality versus quantity debate. So like, I eat 2,000 calories, but it comes from, a tub of Ben & Jerry's and 14 cookies in the evening, but I don't eat in the day. Versus someone that spreads their intake out and eats cleaner, and it's 2,000 calories. So Rob, you're absolutely right. I do think that people would increase their recovery, their energy, their mood, their concentration, their performance in and out of the gym by improving the quality of their food. And that's what I preach. As much as possible. So I do think that they see that. And often when we do that with clients, they come back to me and they go, oh, you've ruined, pizza night for me. I feel so bad after going on for a pizza. And I'm like, no, you just accepted being suboptimal and tired and grouchy all the time. Like, that was your normal, and now we've made you feel better, and you just
exactly.
So like, you're absolutely right, buddy.
Yeah, no, yeah, go on, Ash.
I've just got a question on the energy deficiency syndrome. In those situations where you've got an athlete who's under fueling, I feel like they could be not losing weight. Is that, I feel like I've had that in the past.
Yeah.
And how do you know that? Because like for most people, if they think they're in a calorie deficit, they think they should be losing weight. So they're around their set point weight is probably what you'd presume, and they're basically down regulating their performance to offset that calorie deficit. Obviously, you outlined some of the symptoms earlier, but if you're that person and you're feeling sluggish and drained, but you're not losing weight, how do you spot it in yourself to know that you are under fueling? Because like for most people, they think if I'm under eating, then I should be losing weight, and that might be the red flag that I am under eating. But is there a way that people can distinguish, under eating and actually losing weight versus under eating and not losing weight? It's quite a tricky question.
Yeah, so if we're looking at purely weight loss, like you're going to hit plateaus at certain times during a weight loss journey. Okay, and the longer that you go through this journey, the longer the plateau will be, and then the smaller the dip will be, or the change will be as you go forward. Now, what you need to be aware, like it comes down to awareness, Ash, and it comes down to something that we'll talk about in a minute about testing and assessing, not guessing. Like we don't necessarily need you to be assessing every single day, but you need to be aware. Like, when was the last time you hit a personal best? Like taking it away from the weight loss, I think is the best thing to be kind of thinking about. Like, imagery is a good thing. Sorry, just to kind of talk about that. So taking pictures and not just kind of going on the scales. Thing to see the change, because you can kind of stagnate and wait, but actually your body composition can change. But you've got to take it away if you feel that you're in a deficit and you're not losing weight. Actually, I'm gonna give you a few checkpoints. If you're doing that, track your intake and be brutally honest. I mean everything. Put your veg in there and do it for 7 days, not Monday, Wednesday. Oh, I went out Thursday. Oh, I won't put that in. I licked the spoon, or I had 3 cups of coffee. Oh, I don't put them in with milk. Those things make a difference. So if you really hit a plateau, you need to track everything. Okay, then be very, very honest to see if you are in a deficit. Then you got to be looking at your output. Are you actually burning that many calories in your sessions? If you're doing CrossFit and you haven't quite got the skill level, then you say, oh, I'm burning 500 calories in my CrossFit. I'm training like 8 times a week. Whereas actually, you haven't got kipping pull-ups, you haven't got snatches, you haven't got bar muscle-ups. So when the workouts come out, you're just staring at the bar for 45 minutes. Go and do some proper strength work where you just go in and get actually work done might be a better thing to change your body composition and lose weight. And then the next thing would be awareness of other areas. If you feel that you've hit like that block, that plateau, look at like, you don't necessarily need to get blood work done, but it can be a useful thing. But like for anyone, is like libido, like is your sex drive lower than a snake's belly? Like, men, do you get an erection in first thing in the morning? If you can't remember the last time you have, then there's maybe an issue there. Women, is you got irregular periods or actually a loss of menstrual cycle? That's one of the clear signs of red S. And then, are you enjoying training? Like, is it like motivation going into sessions? Are you feeling good? Are you is it taking ages to warm up into the sessions? This is what I sometimes is a big thing. Like, it takes you like 50 minutes to get in, and it's only really at the end you kind of feel like warmed up. Does your heart rate elevate when you walk up a few stairs? Like, these types of things, this general fatigue is what you need to be aware of, because that can be signs of elevated stress hormones, cortisol and whatever. And, and that can be a real issue in terms of preventing further weight loss.
So if you're in that almost like the opposite situation where you're not trying to lose weight and you're noticing some of these symptoms, but so you're not losing weight, you're not trying to lose weight, but it sounds like you're probably under fueling. What are the steps that somebody could take to get themselves out of the hole? Is it just titrating up the amount of food they eat, like add an extra couple hundred calories and see how they feel? I would say, like, it's almost like an old school reverse diet. Like,
slowly adding in calories. I would start with workout nutrition, eat a little bit more pre-workout, start with adding in that. I think a common issue, actually, one of the things I see is this comes from every athlete I work with, high level to even to now people in the gyms, is that people want to feel light going into sessions. This is something that maybe you've heard as well.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't want to feel too heavy going into my session. Well, potentially you're under eating going into it. So you feel light, but then you end up lightheaded, not performing that well. Whereas actually, if you find the right snack, or if you get up a little bit earlier and eat, or make sure that you plan your meal in if you're training in later in the day, you can still go into that session feeling light. You just need to maybe give yourself a bit more time to digest that food. That will make a massive difference. That was a real challenge I had with footballers. Like, I just want to feel light, I don't want to feel heavy, so it was trying to figure out that. But yeah, titrating your food up, maybe looking at the quality, so improving the quality of it, but also then looking at the amount of output that you're doing. Like, maybe you guys have spoke about it before, is actually the quality of the reps and the quality of the training, and it's more is not always better in certain situations. So you might add an extra rest day in midweek. So maybe people train 4 days in a row, train 2, take a rest day, train 2, take a rest day, repeat that, rather than taking 1 rest day on a Sunday. Like, that would be a certain thing that you can start to do. But titrating up your intake is definitely something, and then looking at your output.
For me, that was, I felt like a load of low blows to my stomach there, because I think back to, like, when I say open up the gym, do say 4 classes back to back, so from 5:30 till 9:30, not eaten, maybe had a coffee, managed to get maybe another coffee, and then I'd have to train straight after because I have a client at 11, so I'd have an hour and a half to train. So then I'd train, have my 11 o'clock client, and then I'm at 12, and I'm just like, God damn. And then I'm just having a protein bar or something, because I'm like, I've got another client, I need to have something. And then it's in poor quality, really, because in the grand scheme that it's not going to be fueling me. And then it's just because it's just something, and that's not even then a lack of preparation. That's then because if I have such a short time to train, then what I would have need to do now, looking back, is adjust my training volume on those days. Have a shorter session so I could fuel myself pre-workout. So at 9:30 when I finish, I maybe have something light to eat, so at least I'm fueled, and then going into it. And it's funny because, as you were saying, like, a lot of those symptoms and stuff like that, I've definitely had some of those over the years. And I know, obviously, I've spoken with yourself about those as well. And it's just like, it can come at you without even really realizing, because you're just like, especially that thing of not really wanting to train and just not having the energy. And it's like, you're like, but I have plenty. Say for myself, I'm like, well, I've got some fat stores, I've got energy, I'm good. And it's like, no, you still need, because it's so hard to utilize those fat stores. So you need the energy to utilize them in the first place. And I just think when it comes to, like, especially in CrossFit, where I've seen it the most, is where you go to the morning classes and you're just not fueling for them. And when we talk about, obviously, fueling for performance, that does mean fueling for the session as well as fueling for the rest of the day to recover. But just having, a banana and stuff might work for some. But that's why it's so important, as you mentioned there, about like tracking your food and also tracking your feelings with these things. Like, how did that session feel? Especially if you're on a cycle where, say, it could be a 4-week cycle and you're doing pretty much the same movement every, say, Monday, for instance. You can say, try over 4 weeks. How does this feel on a Monday, week 1? How does this feel with nutrition? And you're noticing that change, because that was something that, obviously, when I've worked with yourself and so forth, that getting an understanding of actually tuning into your own body. And when it comes to performance, me and Ash spoke about this briefly, but it's that when it comes to performance nutrition, it's so individualized. You obviously have a blanket idea of where the direction we want to go in, but you have to start to really hone in on you, because that's the challenge. And that's where I think, when beyond just, like, say, weight loss or anything like that, where a lot of that is like a balance or so forth, but when it comes to nutrition for performance, it's the task you have to do and make sure you're performing. I think so. You have to take notes. You have to tune in, ask yourself these questions, and be honest with yourself. As you said there,
you're absolutely right, mate. You need to build this. We have a system of training meals, anytime meals. We encourage people to get their go-to meals. So we get them to write 3 breakfasts, 3 lunches, 3 dinners, and then have variations, very small variations of those meals. So you might say, like, well, I know that I feel good on something when I train in the morning is some dried fruit and a shake, whatever, I don't know. And or you trial that and you're like, oh my God, I felt horrendous on that. I feel better training fasted. Now that's cool. Like, do that, but then making sure that you're, let's say you're fitting it to you. We have a system of like, right, a certain pattern of eating. We have kind of, we make sure people build their baseline, we call it, and then then you can personalize it from that. That's a really good thing. But we're terrible at being aware of what works and what doesn't.
What things feel like, yeah.
Consistent with it, and that's something that's really key. Just go back onto your situation there. Like your morning is very common. Like people get up, they train, they get into work, and they're flat out. I posted something about taking your rest day on your busiest work day. Trying to get people to structure their weekend. It's not always like, right, I train on a Monday. Well, what if Monday's like a 10-hour day?
Yeah.
Train on a Sunday when you're sitting on your ass all day, doing nothing. Get your big session done that day, and then you can do a little bit on Monday, or just box off your work. This was something that we did in the football clubs. Like, we had a common, when it's team environment, you have to put good choices in front of them and create the correct environment. And then you can personalize things to each individual person. So you can be like, if you played, then these are the choices you want to make. If you haven't played, these are the choices that you maybe want to choose. But doing a personalized nutrition plan for 45 players is impossible. So you've got to create the correct environment. And that's what you've got to do for yourself. You've got to create the right environment that you can make better choices. So, building these go-to meals is definitely something that I want people to do now. If you work in the city or London, you can there's a couple of cafes that you can get a lunch if you haven't prepped, or you can get a good breakfast on the go. And then you've got your ones that you can take in. So you just need to be aware and try to build this consistency. It's really, really crucial.
One thing that is a tenuous segue from what Rob was talking about, but something I wanted to ask you was eating for different types of training and different types of session. So the obvious extremes would be a pure strength sport like powerlifting or weightlifting, where a typical session is very low rep and not many calories are burnt, as compared to like a big long cardio session, like an Ironman competitor, for example. They could be going for like a 6-hour ride. That's not uncommon at all, and they're burning huge amounts of energy. What are the key distinctions between those, like eating for those two types of sports? And the follow up to that will be, if you're doing a sport like CrossFit and say you're a high level athlete, you'll have each of those types of session in your program. Would you change the nutrition on a daily basis to factor that in, or does that make it too complicated on a practical level?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So on our online platform, the Hub, we've actually I wrote the nutrition for weightlifting program. We're doing one for gymnastics and one for strength and one for engine and aerobic. And Patricia, one of my coaches, is writing one for like marathons, etc. Now, across these, the principles don't really change. Like, 75% probably is exactly the same. We have a set meal structure, we have consistent meal timings, regular patterns of eating, and once you've got that in place, you'll see an improvement in performance and recovery and energy. So then you can start to differentiate between the types of session, but then also your goal. Like, it's like you're talking about strength sport or say powerlifting or weightlifting. Okay, so there's a high so there's less aerobic components to that. Okay, so the energy system the energy systems that are required in that, you need to maybe kind of factor these in. So weightlifting is a performance-based sport unless you're going to compete and have to make weight. So the sole goal is to stick more weight on the bar. So I'm like, you're not going to be doing burpee box jumps or handstand push-up. So potentially you could eat a little bit more going into that session, because even if you're doing 1 reps, 2 reps, 3 reps, whatever max, then it's going to be a longer session, but also your sole goal is to stick more weight on that bar and hit your percentages. So why the hell are you not
on the low side? Yeah.
like, you've got to align it to it. So once the baseline is built, then you can align it. So that would be going into it. But if someone is doing CrossFit and they have an engine class or an endurance class or whatever, and their goal is to lose body fat or lose weight, then shoveling in 350 calories beforehand is maybe not something that they want to do, because the goal is to lose weight and to utilize that session to lose weight. So it's I think you guys kind of use the same triangle I do, where you have performance, body composition, and health, and that kind of interplay between them. It's kind of setting things up, but to align to your goals and that type of session. And then it's about being consistent for the rest of the day. The body doesn't know 24 hours. Like, it's not like on a Monday at 12 a.m. you get a reset of all your calories. Like, if you're training in the morning, you need to look at your whole week and the consistent intake over the week. Like, that's a really key thing. So, I wouldn't necessarily set people's diets up, everyday athlete, general gym member, to be changing them too much on a daily basis. Just don't think that it's something that you're going to see a massive benefit until you've got a really consistent intake. I just think it's way too confusing. It causes way too much stress. I know other nutrition companies, won't mention the name, the biggest in the world, we're coming from. They have like high carb days, low carb days, medium carb days. And so you have to choose that depending on that type of day or type of session. Mate, we're terrible at knowing what type of session, how, you look at a session, you're like, oh, that looks easy, and then it kicks you up.
Yeah.
Was that a high carb day now? But I've already prepped all my meals.
Yeah.
What do I do? Or, I've prepped high carb meals because I'm going to train, and then Sandra calls a meeting at 5 p.m, and then I can't get to my session. So now I've got all my meals prepped for a high carb day. What do I do? It's the practicality of it. Changing it every day is just a nightmare. So if I'm honest, we keep a baseline and then make additions if we need to. Bolting on a bar, bolting on a little snack, bolting on an extra 125 grams of cooked rice. I don't know, whatever it is. And then you can be consistent with it. So for me, every day, no, you need to just be consistent across the week. That will be the biggest thing. For athletes, we do change certain things for certain sessions, but it's not really something that we go into too much detail. I think you can get lost trying to do that. Oh, should he be training fasted, not eating? Should be eating fat pre-workout and endurance sessions? Like, if you've got longer sessions, then the basic premise is they make sure that you're taking food on it and eating it into your workout. If you're doing shorter sessions, maybe you don't need to be eating in that, and making sure that you're fueling it if it's a strength-based or performance-based session. And if it's more of a a practice session or adaptive session is what we call, then you can kind of play around with it to try and elicit a body composition change. And that's how you would manipulate, maybe not eating pre-workout, or maybe reducing the carbohydrate intake before that. That's a really terrible answer, I feel like. I've gone round in circles.
That's a good circle. It's a good circle.
Yeah.
I think when you get to the everyday people, I think if we just relate it to them, I think your approach, as you say, it just makes it simpler, so it's easier to be consistent. And also the way you can look at that is if you've had more calories and you then say didn't train that day, say you had your meeting or whatever, just think you've then got extra fuel for the next session, so you can push just as hard. It doesn't mean, I'm now going to put on X amount of weight because I didn't burn X amount of calories. It's no, my body's now fueled ready. And if you're consistently day in, day out, sometimes sessions are going to be harder than you thought. So you need those extra calories from a couple of days ago. As you say, if you take away from the 24-hour and use the average mentality and just go along the day in and day out, I'm just improving, I'm taking in what I need to and so forth. It means you can be ready for anything. And that's key.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Very well put. Much better than me going on. But yeah, it's good. And that's kind of what we used in the kind of elite side of things. It was trying to be consistent across that time period. rather than just being like, all right, match day -2, match day -1, we need to make sure that you're shoveling in a load of food.
Yeah.
It wasn't really that. It was making sure that, okay, post game, that they got a high intake. You know, the next day maybe they increased it, because then we're not chasing our ass leading into the game. You know, we're being proactive with it, and as opposed to being reactive. And that was a real performance focus that we kind of got players to try and really, you know, understand that, you know, carb loading, or, you know, it is something that you need to do, but it doesn't just start 24 hours before the game. So performance-based nutrition, again, goes back to that bigger picture rather than just what we talked about, and that goes for everybody, you know. And
can you dig into that for us, please?
Yeah.
So just on the carb loading point, because I think it's something that a lot of people, like, I remember at school, the Friday before a Saturday rugby match, everyone would be shoveling in pasta, and then some people, some like rowers at uni, would talk about carb depletion before carb loading. So you go low carb and then into high carb.
Yeah.
What's going on? What's the reality of the situation for topping up your glycogen stores?
Yeah, that's it. It's topping up, or making sure that you're fully stocked from a glycogen point of view. So your body can store a certain amount of glycogen, dependent on your size of your muscles and whatever. I think it ranges from about 200, 300 grams in your liver, and then about 400, 600 or 800 grams, something like that, depending on the size of in your muscles. So we want to make sure that if you've got events, that you're not, that we're not, you know, we've got a full tank effectively. So, you know, in football, some of the research out there is shown that you can actually deplete 80 to 90%, I think it is, by the end of the game.
Wow.
Of your glycogen stores, depending on the intensity and what position you play, etc. Same with rugby, etc. And if you're going into that session with maybe 60% of your glycogen levels, I mean, you know, then it becomes a bit of a battle, then, doesn't it, to get it in? So similar to what people every day would be seeing, like, you know, they might see that I don't necessarily think that people really kind of like fully deplete their glycogen levels unless they are training for like Ironman or whatever. So I don't think it necessarily needs to be a focus point. But the carb loading side of things is that people would eat a lot of carbohydrates kind of 1 or 2 days before an event. And yeah, you need to do that. The research shown that it helps improvement of performance. However, I just think it's a suboptimal strategy to be able to do that 1 to 2 days before the event. Like, your body can store glycogen, so why not be a bit more proactive with it? Instead of asking the body to digest a ton of food beforehand, potentially interact with sleep, digestion. You know, like, it's hard to eat a lot of food in a day, but also the day before you're going to have increased like gastric kind of like intestinal weight as well. So, you know, it might cause issues with your digestion on game day. So what we would like to do is like start it earlier in the week and just drip feed rather than load. I think that's the best way to approach it, so that you're making sure that before. So let's use a competition day or an event. So say you're doing a half marathon, or you've got a CrossFit competition on a Saturday. You know, you might taper your training from Tuesday, Wednesday. So after your last session, intense session, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, load up like big feed of carbohydrates. You know, then drip feed it for the rest of the day. Then on Wednesday and Thursday, you might not train, okay? But eat to a normal training day's intake. As if you're going to train, have your higher carb meals, you know, spread it out so your body can basically more efficiently digest that food and store it. So again, on Friday, it's a top up rather than a load. And that's the key, because, well, I think that's the key.
Yeah.
That you're not then causing all of these issues that can happen with a real high intake of food.
Yeah.
You know, we've all been in the carb coma, and do we want to kind of be that the day before you know, your competition? So think about, you know, Friday and Saturday morning being our top up, as opposed to chasing your nutrition leading into the event. So the carbohydrate loading is definitely something there. So what we would potentially do is lower your fat intake, increase your carbohydrate intake in those kind of few days. Again, just helping balance calories out a little bit, and then making sure that you're stocked and ready to rock and roll.
That's it. And is there any truth in the deplete, like going low carb, allowing you to store more total glycogen when you come back to carbs?
I don't think, I mean, it helps with, like we talked about before, sensitizing yourself to absorbing it a little bit easier and storing it. But again, you can take advantage of that by putting it in post any workout, like increasing post workout again, like we spoke about. I don't necessarily know the exact mechanisms or research behind like a percentage increase, like, oh, it's 10% better to deplete yourself 10 days before and then increase it.
Yeah, it sounds a bit bro sciencey to me. And the other thing that goes with that,
again, I mean, honestly, if it is, it's going to be really small percentages. Like, you know, you don't automatically get an extra 200 grams of glycogen, like, you know,
exactly,
a finite amount depending on your muscle mass.
Exactly.
So
you're also trading off like quality training time. That's the other thing
that was going to be my next point.
Like,
if you deplete it, you're still going to be training hard in that 10-day period beforehand. So low energy availability potentially, like we kind of go back into, you know, decreased immune function. We don't want to be, you know, we lean into events. You've got to be focusing on immune function, and reducing your intake could potentially interact with that as well. So I don't think it's a useful strategy, guys. So anyone that is doing that.
And I guess also when you're doing like those extremes, when you then come to things about like your sleep and how much it impacts your sleep. So obviously if you're digesting while you're sleeping, your body can't really go into that state of deep sleep and like proper REM sleep. So in turn, that's then going to affect your performance. So you might have the fuel, but then you don't have the cognitive function. And that's the thing. It's like, where obviously your methodology of, you know, basically topping up, it just means your body hasn't got to do an extreme. And when you do load, it's an extreme, and your body's like, reality is that's like, what the fuck is going on now? Even though you know what you're doing, your body's like, as you say, it doesn't know 24-hour clock. It doesn't know that you've got a game the next day. It just knows you've shoved all this shit down you. It's like, fuck, how am I going to get rid of this all? Then, you know, you've always got the pre-game poo and stuff like that. And that's longer than you thought. Then you're running out to the pitch, tying up your laces. Like, shit, God. So it's just, these are the things you don't want to have to worry about beyond just the actual training and the nutrition. And I just wanted to make the point that we do keep obviously referring back to a podcast that we done, which was like on the muscle building series, because how a lot of this interlinks. So if you do want to go back, it is episode 22. So just go back to that one, because a lot of these principles are very similar. And when we're trying to decide whether we're training for health, performance, or aesthetics, it means that we have to change the details. But as you said, 75% basically of the principles are nearly exactly the same. And that's what we just need to nail those down and then start to fine tune. And then as you say, you can get to maybe specifics, like whether you do triathlons, Ironman, or you might, as you say, you powerlift. Now you might not expend as much energy in a powerlift, but you do have a lot of, say, cognitive function there. So you have to focus, you have to be switched on. So you might actually find fasting is better for you, but sometimes you need to maybe actually need that energy because you need to stay switched on for the lift, and you can't check out mid lift. So
that's it. And then it goes back to awareness, like finding what works for you. Like we encourage clients to look at identifying sessions through the week, performance sessions versus adaptive sessions or training sessions. You know, and if it's a performance session, you need to know what works for you. If you've got a competition, you know, we use this for the open. So you need to know what you're going to eat the day before and the day of on a competition. And if you don't know and you're just randomly doing it, you know, you could hit bullseye, but you could also hit, you know, you could also hit the one. And you know, if you know that, okay, I feel good on this works for me, you know, that's your performance-based nutrition for the day. Now for the adaptive sessions and training sessions, play around with it, find what works. You know, that stupid thing that nutritionists say, you know, to find what works for you.
It depends.
But it is true, but you've got to build that baseline, and then you can play around with it depending on your goal, the type of session, the time of day. You know, that's the key. And it takes a tiny bit of work, but so does everything. Like, no one has to snatch, no one has to do a muscle up. Like, you don't just, you know, same with nutrition. And then people can get a little bit like they should know everything, and they don't feel that they have to work at nutrition and kind of put a bit of effort into it. But once you do, guys, and you can just nail down a few go-tos, just box it off, tick it off, it's done.
That's it.
You know, I know exactly what I eat on a training day, you know, non-training day. I know it makes me feel good. It's taking a bit of trial and error for digestive issues. Now I'm going to have to figure it out again because I've only slept 4 hours and I've got to go and do Rob's strength method now, which is I really don't want to do.
No, it's not that bad, mate. But I definitely think that when it comes to that thing that you mentioned in there about really understanding your body, oh fuck, I've just lost where my thought were going. But if I was, yeah, you go.
Just to bring it back to what you were saying before, Liam, about your performance versus, or like competition versus adaptive sessions. It's something we talk about in training versus testing. Like if you're eating for your day-to-day training, gradual progression versus eating for a competition, they are different. And just knowing why you're fueling for a certain, well, for either of those two activities, it might be something as simple as caffeine. If you're looking to max out a lift or you're at competition, you're probably willing to lose a bit of sleep that night by going too big on caffeine, versus it's Monday night and you're looking for a normal training session and you don't want to get into a sleep deficit for the rest of the week. And I think that leads nicely to something I wanted to ask you about. Is we've got a red pill training camp coming up this week, where we've got 12 athletes coming in and they're going to be training very hard for about 10 days in a row, up to 6 sessions a day. It's going to be difficult time-wise to get time to eat enough. I know, just like from the volume of training they're going to be doing. So that, I guess, is very similar to a normal CrossFit event where there's multiple events through the day. They're going to be working very hard with brief windows to get their food in. And I know it's something that you work very closely with your athletes on, how to manage just getting the right fuel in, like not just the amount, but the type of fuel as well, to allow them to continue to perform. What are your key points in those situations? Because I think a lot of our listeners like to compete and would like to hear it.
Yeah, again, you've got to be looking at using a mixture of liquid-based nutrition, snacks and meals. You've got to be looking at more calorie-dense options, and this is where maybe it blur the lines between quality and quantity. Yeah, you probably need to have less quality foods to hit the calorie density and to make sure that you've got enough energy availability or energy available to perform, because the goal of this training camp is to push and to train and to elicit an adaptation. Now, if you are looking at the bar, not lifting, are you going to create adaptation? No. Like short-term period of maybe like less quality food, but that hitting the required amounts of energy is going to be beneficial, because that scenario is needed, like for you to hit that to focus on hitting that amount. Same as competition day. If you're doing a CrossFit competition, hopefully we're going to get back to these very, very soon for people. Then you've got, like, we don't normally do 3 to 4 workouts in a day. And are you going to be chowing down on your normal meals? No. We would encourage people to put stuff into wraps, to slow cook meat so it shreds it and makes it easier to digest. You would use liquid nutrition, like use fruit juices, blend smoothies, use, like things that are less fibrous, like we talked about extracting things, like, so fruit juice instead of the whole fruit. It's time to use that, because if you measured in like, 500 mils of orange juice or apple juice or whatever with a shake, that's going to be 400 calories maybe, as opposed to eating apples.
So you have to digest them.
You are not going to be wanting to get back on that in that gym trying to do that. So you need a balance of different types of things. You need to be sensible with your food choices, but again, trying to build the best quality, and you can do it, but then you need that kind of thing. Like sushi, I always think is a great one. I love a bit of sushi on a comp day. Maybe leave the tempura prawns out, but like that kind of thing is very, very calorie dense. It's really kind of like helpful for that kind of high energy density. So that would be something I would look to. But you got to practice, you got to replicate for everybody. You got to replicate this. Use a weekend, to do. Don't have to be 4 workouts, and there can be 2 workouts in a day. Do it. Eat something. See how you feel. Hit the next workout. That's what you got to be thinking about doing. So for the athletes doing the camp, you got to be edging on really kind of just making sure that you're getting getting the right amounts in. But yeah, you can do it. You just got to be a little bit more quicker.
Mate,
Awesome.
I appreciate that. We've probably taken up a lot of your time, and you need to get to your family life now. So I really do appreciate your time.
You're crying, so I might.
Yeah, well, we're so grateful for you coming on and spreading this learned because it's definitely goes down really well. So thank you for your time, mate. I've learned a lot as always, and I really appreciate talking. Guys, as always, you can find us on all the normal platforms: iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. You can find Liam at ph_nutrition on Instagram and phnutrition.co.uk.
That's correct.
Brilliant. So apart from that, thank you again for your time, for listening to this podcast. I hope you managed to get some stuff out of it. If you do have any questions following this, do drop us a direct message or anything like that, and we'll be sure to add that to our Q&A episode coming up. And thanks for your time, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers, guys.